So we shall start with Steve, and he's going to tell us about Cantor's diagonal argument. So Steve, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Now, I'm going to talk about Cantor's diagonal argument. But before I go into the argument, there are some specific areas. I will do the specific concepts I would like to highlight. The first one, bijection. These are the four areas I'm going to talk about. Now, to start with the bijection, we say that there is a bijection between two sets A and B if there is a function A which maps A to B, and it is a one-to-one correspondence between the two sets. Then the cardinality of a set, let's say set A, cardinality of a set A, noted by this sign, we say cardinality of A is simply, we can define it in simple terms as the number of elements in this set A. Then the next concept is countability of sets. Here I'm going to define two concepts. The first one is countably finite. We say that a set is countably finite if we can find a bijection between that set. Let's say there is a function A. Between this set A and a subset, a finite subset of natural numbers, then we say that a set is countably finite. Then the second one is countably infinite. Now here we say that a set is countably infinite if we can find a bijection F A between this set and the set of natural numbers. Then we say the set is countably infinite. Having defined this concept, I will first describe the argument. Cantor argued that given an infinite subset, there are infinitely many subsets which cannot be put into one-to-one correspondence with infinite subset of natural numbers. So that was Cantor's argument, and I'm going to use that concept to show you that there is more than one infinity, and to prove that there is no bijection between real numbers and the set of natural numbers. So, suppose we have this set which comprises of the decimal numbers between 0 and 1. Then we want to assume that S is countably infinite. Infinite. Meaning that we can find a bijection between this set and the set of natural numbers. So we can have a function f. That's our assumption. So we want to go through the argument and see whether this assumption holds. Now let D be the digits, be the decimal numbers between 0 and 1. So we want to form numbers and show a bijection between these numbers and the set of natural numbers. All numbers between 0 and 1 and the set of natural numbers. Okay. Suppose we have a table. In this table we have set of natural numbers. Then in this column we have the decimal numbers. Then we form the natural numbers from 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to n. We want to form decimal numbers b. The first number is b1, such that the corresponding decimal number is 0.b11. I'll explain that. Then we have b12, b13, b14, up to b1k, and it goes. Then we have a second number, b2, which corresponds to 0.b21, b22, b23, b24, b2k, and it goes. b3, 0.b31, b32, b33, b34, up to b3k. Then all the way up to bn is equal to 0.bn1, bn2, bn3, bk, k, bnk, and it goes. Now, what I'm saying here, the first subscript 1 means the corresponding, implies the corresponding natural number. So this number 0.b1, it corresponds to natural number 1, and the second one, subscript 1, means the number of decimal places after the position after the decimal place. It is at position 1 after the decimal place. This means it corresponds to natural number 1, and it is at the second decimal place. So having formed this number, our assumption was that all the numbers between 0 and 1 we can get a bijection, that we can form one-to-one correspondence between those numbers and the set of natural numbers. So we want to see if we can find any number which is not in this set, decimal number which is not in this set. That means it has no correspondence with the set of natural numbers. So let's form a number x which is equal to 0.x1, x2, x3, then up to xk, and it goes. Then in our formation of x, we take the digits at the diagonal. We take this number such that x1 is not equal to d11, x2 is not equal to d22, up to xk is not equal to is not equal to 0 or 9. I'll explain. What I'm saying that we take the digits at the diagonal, these digits, then we make sure that the digit x1 is not the same as d11, x2 is not the same as d22, x3 is not the same as d33, and similarly this one. And the digit x1 is not 0 or 9. Reason why I'm saying this x1 up to xk should not be 0. Suppose we have a number 0.1, 0.009, and we have 0.01 something. If we say that we are taking zeros, for example, this number 0.09 can, in real numbers, we can round off this one to mean the same thing. So that's why I'm saying we don't take zeros and 9. Now, we found another number x, which is not in this set. But our assumption was that all numbers in 0 to 1 we can find a bijection. We found another number here. That means our assumption contradicts. And what we can say by that, now, the given set S does not hold. So there is no bijection between this set of decimal numbers and the set of natural numbers. And that brings us to Contour's argument, which states that there are infinitely many infinite sets which cannot be put into one-to-one correspondence with the set of natural numbers. 0 to 1, there are so many numbers. There are infinite numbers between 0 to 1, and there are infinite set of natural numbers. We found that we cannot put the infinite set 0 to 1 and the infinite set of natural numbers into one-to-one correspondence. And that's the argument. Then the consequence of our argument, we can say that the cardinality of set of real numbers is greater than the cardinality of natural numbers. Remember my definition for cardinality. We said that is the number of elements in a set. We found that in this set, we compared all natural numbers and the decimal numbers, and we found another number which is not in that mapping. So this cardinality must be greater than the other cardinality. Thank
you. Okay. He's left with 3 more minutes. I think we can ask him some questions if we have any. Yes.
Yes, Steve, from the natural numbers 1, you said there is a bijection, a 1-to-1 and on-to bijection. But from your explanation, I thought your 1 was mapping to more than 2 or 3 of those decimals that you've written. And that is not a bijection.
What I'm saying here, I'm forming a number between 0 and 1, such that the first subscript here represents the corresponding natural number. Okay. So this one, for example, if we have 0.111, here we can take our number to be 0.1 because this number corresponds to 1.
Yes.
You said that for counter method, it's proof that there is not just one infinity, there is many infinities.
Okay.
I would like to discuss.
Okay. We know that there are infinitely many natural numbers. Yeah? And we found another natural number which has more elements than this one. Can't you say this infinity is not the same as this infinity?
Given that you already proved that there are
express that in terms of cardinality. Like the cardinality for real numbers is given by 2 today, but LF naught, and this one is LF naught. So this is the comparison in terms of number of elements in the two.
So, yes.
People usually use measure theory as you know, or category, clear category. Coming back to Mohammed's question, you claim the stronger claim that you could keep on doing this infinitely many times, that you've just done one step. So this looks like the first step in a procedure which you're saying can be repeated to R. In fact, Cantor did it to show that, using the same argument, to show that the power set of R is strictly bigger than R, and then you just keep on doing that. So do you know how this argument can be used to show that the power set of X is strictly larger cardinality than that of X? You know how that, have you seen that proof?
Yes, can maybe highlight if you might need to.
No, I don't need to go into the proof, but you see that why it's the same proof. It looks a little bit different at first, but actually it's the same.
It's the same.
Okay. Maybe Gary could.
It's the same proof.
Yeah, so that answers your question. You apply to the power set of R, and then the power set of the power set of R, and you get the same discrete.
Thank you.
Okay. One last question. Now, Steve, I think the argument here, it seems like it only tells us that X cannot be found in the set of all the numbers from 1 up to n. But what if X actually appears beyond n?
Okay. Now, this is how I'm going. I'll first start by asking me a question. If we are going beyond n, our set is also increasing and we're getting more big. Is that not the case?
Yeah, but I can always, n is a finite number. So what if I just go beyond that number n? Because the argument here is just telling us that the number x cannot be found in anything below n. But what if x appears beyond n? Even if you increase your n, yes, of course the argument will still be valid. It tells us that x cannot be found before n. But what if it's there above n? Or what prevents it from appearing beyond n?
Now let me put it this way. Let's try to. We know that you are trying to suggest that there is a number we find which is already here. Okay, that's what you're trying to suggest. If we go beyond n, then our number x will be within this set. That's what you're trying to ask. Our x can be, we can find another x if we go beyond n, which is in D, is in our set. Is that what you're asking?
No, actually what I'm asking is, indeed, we can all see that x does not appear anywhere from the numbers 1 up to n. But what if it appears afterwards?
If it appears afterwards, maybe the proof might not hold.
Then there will be another x such that it should not be found.
Now what he's trying to say, if go beyond n,
The number you've constructed is infinite, and each I that you've chosen is different from the DII.